Warning, the following podcast is a shit show, and the individuals you are about to meet are idiots. Their opinions, anecdotes, and advice contain zero nutritional value. This is the critical human condition and all of its strangeness. This is life, according to an idiot.
I have a fucked up knee. Hey.
You're getting so old. Hi, welcome to our podcast. My name's Mo.
And I'm Jeremy.
And you are listening to According to an Idiot. I feel like maybe we should do like a little introduction in case we have some new listeners. I feel like that's important. Welcome, if you're a new listener.
And that's the introduction.
That's the introduction. We're going to talk about weird stuff. Jeremy prepared the topic.
I did.
For this episode. This is a surprise to me. I don't know what you're going to be talking about.
Yeah, so if you are new, and you might not be, this might be exclusively listened to by the same 5 people who have been listening to our podcast since day one.
Hey, don't say that. We get at least like 1,200 listens.
Yeah. I mean, don't tell them the real numbers. let them think we're humble, and then also think, well, maybe they have like 8,000.
Yeah.
You know, we explore the unexplained.
Yeah, we do.
We try to know the unknown.
Ooh, sultry.
And while oftentimes it's ghosts and monsters and ghouls and whatnot, this time we're going to step into some weird history.
Ooh, okay.
I love me some history. I promise this is not going to become like, dad History Channel material. I'm going to try my best to guide us through this chapter of history in a very quick and painless way. And I think it's going to be very disturbing.
Okay. Are you wanting it to be like a secret what this is?
Well, I'm about to reveal it right now, so it's not going to be a secret.
Okay.
I'm going to be talking about posthumous executions.
The fuck? Is that when you shit yourself and you die?
Basically, yes. No, that's posthumous defecations. Basically, a posthumous execution is just being a real dick to a dead body.
Okay, so like killing an already dead person.
Exactly. So, have you ever hated someone so much that after they died, you wish they could die again?
Not particularly, but I mean, I'm still leaving that space open in my soul and in my chest. Maybe someone will fill it one day.
For that special someone. I admire that.
In my head, I am a potential hero of sorts on a grand adventure, and a villain is sure to pop up at some point.
Yes.
And then I will want to kill them for some misdeed they have done against me, and then I'll kill them again. Posthumous execution.
I think that could also be called delusions of grandeur, but...
okay, so here's the thing.
Maybe talk to a therapist about that.
Here's the thing.
I'm a hero. I'm looking for my villain.
I've been I've gotten into reading again, and I feel like reading, because I like to read like fantasy novels and stuff, usually, it kind of forces you to see things as like grander than it is.
Sure.
Unless, if you're mentally ill like I am, which I am.
Yeah.
And I specifically, have you heard of the series called A Court of Thorns and Roses?
My darling girlfriend has read that series, I think, at least twice, all the way through.
Beautiful.
Obsessed.
Tell her to call me.
Okay.
Because I just finished today, and...
The series or just the first one?
The series.
Okay. She will be frothing at the mouth when she hears this, because she is dying for like a community that she can talk to about these books. She loves everything Sarah J. Maas.
So good.
She's read her other series, The
Throne of Glass.
Throne of Glass. She's read that twice. I think she's reading that a second time. I think she's read it twice. But that's like 12 books or something.
It's a lot.
She's obsessed with fantasy novels.
Romanticies. I'm trying to start a book club with my friends here in Austin. And a lot of it is like burly men.
Really?
That I like met at the gym.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, you have to read this book. Knowing that it's just like Twilight smut. I'm just like,
from what I understand, I'll refer to it as like smut or whatever. And Catherine is very like indignant. Like it's not just smut. Yes, at one point there's an entire chapter that is about a blowjob, but it's not smut. It's like, it's a good story. It's got lore. It's got history. It's wonderful writing. And I'm sure she's right, because she's got good taste. But I promised her that after I finish the book I'm currently trying to get through, that I would start the first one of those.
Yes.
So, do you think I'd like it?
Ironically, yes.
Do you like it ironically?
At first. And now I unironically like it.
Okay.
I'm sure she's explained it to you 1,000,001 times, but if you're not familiar with the series and you're listening to this, A Court of Thorns and Roses has been a series that like blew up in the past like couple years. It's known as being like horny fairy books. The first book is very similar to like Beauty and the Beast, but if there were sex thrown in. And the world building is good. The writing is not the best in the beginning. It does get better. It does feel very Twilight-esque. It's kind of fun for that. Like, it's very campy. But as the books go on, the more, like, graphic she gets and the sex scenes and the more often they are. And it's like,
Okay.
Like, especially in the last book, half of it is probably about sex.
Yeah, that's what Kat was saying. So, yeah, she had me read some of the scenes and, like, I was like, okay. That made it twitch.
Yep. And that's what she wrote, too. She's like, cock twitching and...
Yeah. He penetrated my entrance.
Yeah.
I love the words they use. They'll be like, his member, or just him, like, he entered.
Yeah.
I felt him.
The first one is a lot like that. Like, it tries to be romantic still. And, like, oh, he sheathed himself inside me and stuff. And then the last one, she's just like, cock balls, cock balls, cock balls. He drained his seed within me.
That's called maturing. That's called developing as an author.
That's getting feedback from readers and then incorporating that feedback.
Just say it, please.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know how that's going to play into murdering people, but maybe I'll turn into a fairy at some point. That's what I was getting at.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So we've all heard of the age-old custom, don't disrespect the dead. Or at some point in your life, you've probably been told, like, not to speak ill of the dead.
Yeah, that's what pussies say.
When a cock is drained inside of them. So, yeah.
When cocks are twitching.
Yeah. By the way, if you're a new listener, sorry, you've already clicked off of this. So,
Deborah from 4 years ago is still seething. The one negative review we had on iTunes. What was her name?
Linda.
Debbie? Linda? Oh, that's Linda, yeah.
Linda, yeah. Because we talked about aliens and probing, and she was like, don't ever suggest that an asshole can have a finger in it.
She's like, my kids listen to this podcast. And I was like, Linda, that sounds like a family issue.
It's labeled explicit. So you've heard, don't disrespect the dead, don't speak ill of the dead. The latter has been one of society's unwritten rules for centuries, a widely accepted social norm. And the origin of this norm has been traced back as far as the 6th century BC in Greece. From Cylon, a Spartan. He's just like a paragon of intellect, considered one of the 7 sages of Greece. And so here are some of Cylon's other pocket wisdoms. I'll just go through a list.
I'm listening.
Honor old age. Do not laugh at a person in misfortune. Do not desire what is impossible. Prefer punishment to disgraceful gain, for the one is painful but once, but the other for one's whole life. Learn how to regulate one's own house well. Less is more, that was coined by him, and obey the laws. He seems like a common sense philosopher. None of those were very inspiring. It's more like, be good, don't be mean.
Sounds like a lot of rules I don't want to follow.
Yeah, a lot of rules. The kind of guy who he would pull over to help you change a flat tire, but like also have like a concerning number of Blue Lives Matter t-shirts despite having no affiliation with law enforcement. Like he's very authority, honor. But his original phrase, do not speak evil of the dead, has had a very lasting impact. The modern understanding of this phrase is that it's unfair to insult or criticize the dead because they can't defend themselves or justify their past actions. But what if the deceased in question was so villainized that death could not protect them? What if the public or the state regarded one so lowly that the social norm could be ignored? Or better yet, what if instead of accosting the dead verbally, we just accosted them physically?
Like Thanos.
Like Thanos.
Yeah, he's a villain.
So for such a scenario, mankind invented posthumous executions.
For those exceptionally wicked people like Thanos.
For those real shitty asses. This was a kind of public ceremony involving the ritual mutilation of a dead body as a form of punishment. These executions would take place immediately following a traditional public execution, whether it was burned at the stake or being hanged, whatever. Afterwards, they would take the body and do something worse to it.
Right. Kick those ashes of the burned guy.
Yeah. And then breathe them in. Or in specific cases, a dead body would be dug up and given a posthumous execution. So you could be dead for years, and someone goes, hey, wait a minute. Fuck that guy.
That guy was kind of an asshole. And you just like...
Fuck that guy from 200 years ago. Dig him up and show him what for. And then you dig him up and you and your buddies just beat the living piss out of him, but he's dead, so there is no piss, there's just dust.
Skin slothing off.
Yeah, if there's any skin left. So posthumously executing a corpse that had been long dead, that is, already buried, typically occurred when one was discovered to have been guilty of a crime after already dying. Maybe even like a grudge related, like if you really hated somebody, but they were executed before you could show them the business. You say, let's dig that bastard up and let's do some horrible things to him.
So what age period did you say this was common?
Okay, so there has been forms of public executions for almost as long as there's been human civilization.
Right.
But what we're going to get into is like medieval and onward.
Okay.
Is what we're going to be looking at.
I mean, that makes sense because, like, when I think of that, I kind of think of, like, when soldiers or people would, like, hang up corpses outside fortresses and stuff
we'll
as,
talk
like,
about
a
that.
warning.
That's a big part of this.
Oh,
okay. That's a big part of this. That is a posthumous execution.
Mm-hmm. Do I get bonus points?
Yes, you do. You can leave right now if you want. Yeah, so if they were discovered to have been guilty of a crime after death or if it was a grudge, etc., etc. It could also be purely symbolic, as was the case for the Persian king Cambyses, I think is his name. It's Cambyses. Cambyses?
Okay.
Probably wrong. I don't know, whatever. Who, upon finally conquering Egypt in 525 BC and taking the pharaoh's palace, immediately called for his former rival, Amasis II, to be posthumously executed. Amasis II had died 2 years prior to Cambyses' conquering. Mm-hmm. So his arch nemesis, think like your books, like enemies to lovers. You know, like there's some passion. He's still got some passion for this guy. Like he never got to kiss him. So now he has to dig him up and beat him up.
So that's like kind of fucked up though, like in Egypt specifically, because they revere death so much. So like disrupting a corpse like that is basically ripping them from their afterlife.
Exactly.
And dooming them to hell.
It's more symbolic and it's the highest form of disrespect. Mm-hmm. And it's like that for the rest of history pretty much too, because even when we get into like the 1600s, 1500s, whatever and onward, at that time, I don't know if they still believe in this, but like, you know, hardcore Christians would consider that you had to be buried in one piece. You had to be buried together in your natural form in a Christian grave. Again, I'm not sure if this is still the case, but graves would face the east. So they would face the rising sun because they believed, and we'll get into this later, that when Jesus comes back, he will come from the sunrise, from the east. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that even makes physical sense.
And then he can step all over them.
He what?
After he wakes up, he can step on them.
Nobody knows this, but Jesus is going to come back and he's going to be giant.
He's going to be so big.
We're going to get Mecha Jesus.
I fucking hope so. Someone's going to write a romance novel about this. We got to stop.
Yeah, he's going to sheath himself inside of all of us.
Oh my God.
So we have this guy, Cambyses, that's how you pronounce it. Again, I'm sorry if you're a historian listening to this and you're throwing up in your car right now.
That's what will do it and not the giant Jesus.
Yeah, it's going to be, they understand the giant Jesus thing. They know that giant Jesus canonically has a large member. Mm-hmm. Massive. Perhaps the size of like a skyscraper.
Or perhaps the Noah's boat, whatever you call it.
Perhaps the Noah's boat.
The art?
Methinks his member doth compare to the size of the Noah's boat.
Mm-hmm.
The one and only.
Theeth boat.
Theeth Noah botheth.
What is that called? The
Noah's Ark.
Noah's Ark.
Yeah, Noah's Ark.
His boat. His yacht.
His yacht. Noah's yacht.
Where's Noah? I'm going to dig him up and I'm going to kick his ass.
I'm gonna kick his ass. So he called this new emperor, demanded that this dead pharaoh be dug up and posthumously executed. Amasis II had died 2 years prior, so Persian forces exhumed his body from its tomb and had it desecrated, as Amasis II had been the final great ruler of Egypt and would be the last native Egyptian pharaoh to rule in Egypt. His posthumous execution not only served as an ultimate catharsis for the Persian king Cambyses. Cambyses or Cambyses? What the fuck am I? What was I saying? Cambyses?
Oh,
you don't know.
Brother, don't ask.
You weren't listening.
I was listening, but I wasn't listening for the minute details between Cambyses and Cambuses. Cambussy.
So Persian King Cambusi, that was his catharsis, but also a disturbing ceremony marking the fall of a dynasty and marking the fall of like an era of Egypt. The Greek historian Herodotus, it's spelled like Herodotus, it's Herodotus.
Right, that was an Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Is that how his name is pronounced? Herodotus?
Herodotus, I think is.
Herodotus.
Herodotus.
So Herodotus was present for the event. He's the original historian. So he also like could have definitely been like making everything up. No one wants to talk about that part of it.
Yeah.
He got first dibs on the fucking story of everything, you know?
Well, didn't he like say there was like a minotaur and like...
Well, no, he would see bones. He would see bones of animals. Like there's a story where he saw in the desert, he saw what was the skeleton of a whale because there used to be a sea where this desert was. He didn't know that. So he goes, there must be flying serpents because the snake just landed here in this desert. That's the only option. So like he wasn't an anthropologist. He wasn't a paleontologist. So yeah, Herodotus was present for this event and documented the ritual in his major historical text, The Histories, Book 3, Chapter 16. And he wrote, quote, "No sooner did Cambyses enter the palace of Amasis that he gave orders for his body to be taken from the tomb where it lay. He proceeded to have it treated with every possible indignity, such as beating it with whips, sticking it with goads are like cattle prods, and plucking its hairs. As the body had been embalmed and would not fall to pieces under the blows, Cambyses had it burned."
Damn.
Which is disgusting. It was like this rubbery fucking old dead body. Like, it's not crushing, man. I'm sorry, boss. We can't mush it. He's like, then we'll burn it.
Everyone's like, oh.
Yeah, everyone's like, I'm going to fucking throw up. You just plucked his hairs.
And they're like, what else, sire? And he's like, pluck his hair.
Yeah. People didn't have TVs, so they're probably like, this is the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. Like,
Right.
This is the most excited I've ever been. Posthumous executions were carried out as far back as the ancient world and continued well into the 20th century, with similar acts likely still occurring today in less stable regions of the world. Basically, anywhere there was a violent revolution, bodies of deceased rulers and oppressors are probably being publicly desecrated as an expression of revenge, pretty much. Vigilante justice. Like you can imagine, for example, like things that kind of happened to Gaddafi when that revolution happened and he got killed. His body was also like, disrespected because everyone wanted a piece of that guy. I believe he was bayoneted up the ass.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's not cool.
All right, everybody listening, take notes for 2025. Because I imagine the French Revolution had some of this shit too.
So, as we often do, and I'm sorry for this bias, but we're going to move to Europe for the rest of this.
Okay.
Needless to say, the following info doesn't represent how other continents did this stuff, but I'm sure it's all related. So this is specifically how Europe did it.
And everywhere else in the world.
And everywhere else in the world. This speaks for every culture ever, okay? I just want you to know I'm the ambassador of everybody.
Thank you.
Me, a straight white man.
I'm going to keep him in check.
One major purpose of these executions was to show the rest of society that justice was inescapable, even in death. To take things further, these desecrated corpses were denied proper burial. Frequently, criminals worthy of a second execution had their bodies disrespected via two grotesque methods. There was hanging in chains, which we'll talk about first, and then there was public dissection. So, hanging in chains, let's get into that. The ritual of hanging in chains required a body to be suspended from a gibbet, and a gibbet is a gallows-like structure. Picture that T shape when you play the game Hangman? That T that he's hanging from? That's a gibbet, not a gallows.
That's good to know.
Yeah. Gibbeting a body was a way to display an executed person purely for the purpose of discouraging citizens from criminal acts. Gibbeting or hanging in chains. I feel so nerdy saying gibbeting.
I know, it sounds like a frog.
Gibbeting.
Gibbeting.
Gibbeting or hanging in chains was in fact a common law punishment, meaning that if one deemed it necessary, a judge could impose it in addition to an execution. So judges mostly reserved gibbeting for severe cases of treason, murder, or piracy. But thieves also received this treatment when sentenced to death. So if you were a bad enough thief, you'd be sentenced to death, and also, they'd say, hanged in chains as well. Gibbets were built to suspend the body from a significant height and intentionally placed along well-traveled public highways, also near waterways, so that people on ships, like potential pirates or whatever, could also see them and go, okay, I'm entering a territory where like they are not going to handle crimes very well. I will face punishment. Mm-hmm. So the bodies would be placed in cages until they had sufficiently decayed, at which point the remains were then broken up and scattered. So again, no burial, just snap them up.
What a shitty job that would be.
Yeah.
It's your job to break up the dead body and chuck it around.
Yeah. A lot of dissociation involved, I'm sure.
Do you think that's like a weird twisted version of like, oh, I have breadcrumbs for the little birds and the ducks and stuff, and then there's this guy breaking up dead bodies and feeding the wolves?
All right, birdies, come on, here you go. It's just like portions of a forearm, just oh, they like this one, come on.
All the possums are gathering around. Father.
So to prolong a particular display, bodies were sometimes covered in tar or wrapped in literal chains, which physically held and bound the body together. Later advancements led to the use of body-shaped iron cages that were mounted on the gibbets with the body firmly encased in it. Remember in that one Pirates of the Caribbean movie? Mm-hmm. Remember that scene? I was a kid that scared the fuck out of me, where you saw crows eating a man's eye, and he was in this metal frame. So these cages worked surprisingly well. For example, in 1743, a man named John Breads was hanged in East Sussex for the crime of murder. After his hanging, Bread's body was displayed in one such form-fitting cage, where it was left to decompose in place for just over 20 years.
Wow.
The cage is now on display, I guess, in the Rye area town hall, and still contains the skull of John Breads, which remains locked in the head frame. It didn't come out, so they left it there. So he's still in that fucking cage, which is...
That's crazy.
Right? Over time, the brutal sight of gibbeted bodies grew unpopular with the public. After a while, people came to their senses and they're like, this is just kind of fucked up. Mm-hmm. The fucking government is making me look at these rotten, nasty bodies.
Right, and it smells, I'm sure.
Also disease, because birds come, pick it up, they drop pieces, they scatter pieces.
Rats,
yeah. And if it's near waterways, I'm sure they fall into the waterways, pollutes the water. So the public said, not a fan of this anymore, and the practice began to negatively impact the public's opinion of whatever particular monarch or government was responsible for it. So it was bad PR. So until the act was formally repealed in 1828, the rescue or attempted rescue of a corpse was punishable by transportation, which is exile to a penal colony for up to 7 years. So if let's say you have a friend who was disrespected in that way, and one night you go, I'm going to go get my friend, or you knew they were wrongly accused. I don't want to see him like this every day, whatever the case was. They catch you trying to take down any part of that body, they fucking send you to Australia or wherever. For 7 years, you're fucking out of here.
Right. We can't trust you.
Yeah. The alternative to hanging in chains was, as I mentioned previously, dissection. This was codified through the Murder Act of 1751, passed by
the Murder Act?
The Murder Act, passed by the Parliament of Great Britain with the goal of, quote, better preventing the horrid crime of murder. In the 1751 Act, posthumous executions were made legal and mandatory, specifically hanging in chains or public dissection, only for murderers. So if you were a murderer, if deemed necessary, you were to be hung up like that or cut apart. By destroying the corpse, the state was denying murderers proper burial, which was a harrowing concept in the eyes of a largely devout public. And at the time in England, it was believed that for a Christian to be resurrected on Judgment Day, a body had to be properly buried, physically whole, in the ground, in a grave facing east. And like I said before, the point of facing a grave east was that a resurrected Christian could rise with God, Jesus, whatever. Some sources imply that God or Christ would come literally from the east or with the sun.
He would come the east.
But also, this, of course, as all things are, that isn't really a original Christian idea because it comes from, can you guess? Who does it always come from?
Aleister Crowley.
No, L. Ron Hubbard. No, who do the Christians always steal their ideas from?
Everyone.
The pagans.
Ah, the pagans.
God damn it, Mo.
I'm like, they steal it from, Jewish people, Muslim people.
No, fair enough.
Hinduism, Buddhism.
There's so much, almost all Christian holidays are actually originated from pagan holidays.
Yeah.
And we talk about that in we have an episode on Yule, and we go into that a little bit more. So those darn pagans, those pesky pagans.
Those darn pagans. They're so bad, but What if we just take all the stuff they do and make it holy?
Yeah. So early pagans and Celts that had previously occupied Great Britain were already burying their dead in graves facing east, likely due to the fact that the sun rises in the east. And pagans found spiritual significance in cycles of the sun and the moon, and astronomical and astrological meaning, you know? Like how Stonehenge, they said that was built in correspondence with like certain constellations and stuff like that. And we also, again, we talk more about that we have an episode on Celtic stuff. I can't remember what.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about thin places.
Yes.
Learn more about that through that. So, all that said, no grave meant no peace, and a body torn apart meant no resurrection or shot at an afterlife. So, just like how you said in Egypt, you're plucked right from the afterlife. So, what is public dissection? We haven't really talked about that. Following the routine execution, for example, a hanging, the criminal's corpse would be removed by the hangman and passed on to surgeons waiting near the gallows. Before the gathered crowd, the surgeons would begin slicing and sawing at the body until they had produced a near academic quality display. With limbs removed and torsos opened up so organs could be viewed, onlookers would shuffle past the mutilated corpses before leaving the gallows, catching a gruesome glimpse of the human anatomy. And in some cases, they'd like try to take parts of the body as a souvenir. Because it was actually believed that the hand of a hanged man had like blessed qualities. There's this belief. I have a book on old folk beliefs, and I can't remember what, I think it's just called Dead Man's Hand, but they thought it could cure warts and blemishes. Sometimes women, if a man was left hanging, they would walk up, sneak up to it, and have that hand caress their face, like press that hand against their face.
Oh my God.
In hopes that that blemish, that wart, that pimple, whatever would disappear. I'm not sure where that started. That might be an interesting thing to look into, but you know.
Doctors hate this one simple trick.
Doctors hate her. Some notable cases of posthumous execution. Some of these are pretty fucking wild. In January of 897, this is before we had 4 numbers in our years, so this is pretty serious. Pope Stephen VI conducted what is known as the cadaver trial on a predecessor, Pope Formosus. Formosus had been a polarizing figure in medieval Italy, and there were many reasons Pope Stephen wished to disgrace his legacy. A major one was that during his pre-popehood, Formosus assisted in a coup that resulted in a duke overthrowing the disputed king of Italy. At the time, the guy that would become Pope Stephen was not a fan of that. The cadaver trial of Pope Formosus was conducted with a council of disturbed and unconsenting clergymen who were summoned to take part in the dead pope's judgment. The corpse of Pope Formosus was exhumed, having been rendered a rotten skeletal mess from 7 months of decomposition. Pope Stephen had the remains dressed in fancy, like, pope clothes and propped up in a throne, and they faced trial. And I think they had, like, a deacon, like, speak for the dead pope. I'm not sure how that went, but I think they would answer the questions to the deacon, and the deacon who was standing nearby the skeletal rotting mess in the throne. Having known what the Pope did, he would then role play as him.
Oh my God.
Completely psychotic. Ultimately found guilty of crimes such as perjury and illegal ascension to the papacy, the corpse of Pope Formosus was stripped of his robes, had 3 fingers severed from his right hand. Those were considered the blessing fingers. And he was dressed in layman clothes, buried briefly before being re-exhumed and thrown into the Tiber River.
Wow.
In addition to the trial and desecration, Pope Stephen VI ordered that all ordinations conducted by Formosus, so basically every priest that he had promoted to bishops, everyone he had ordained, would be annulled. So everything he did was null and void.
Damn.
Any orders or acts he had created while Pope, they were all retracted. So this was an example of an ancient practice called damnatio memoriae, which is Latin for condemnation of memory, in which an individual was erased from any official accounts and records. And this happened like a decent amount in the past. So like you wonder who we don't know about because...
Right, they've been lost to history.
This ranged from removing someone's name from an inscription to full-on rewrites of historic records.
Wow.
Erase them and exclude their name and their accomplishments. The cadaver trial triggered violent political outrage and uproar, and the scandal soon led to Pope Stephen's imprisonment and subsequent death by strangulation the summer following this trial. So, like, everyone knew this guy was fucking crazy.
Wow.
In the aftermath, a monk retrieved Pope Formosus' body from the banks of the Tiber, and he was reburied at his original grave. And later, Pope Theodore II reinstated the acts and ordinations of Formosus and banned any further cadaver trials. There's also this story that I looked everywhere. I couldn't find any elaboration of this, but they said that when they had found the body on the banks of the river, it had been like found by a small settlement on the river, this small town. And the people claimed that the dead body had been performing miracles. And I couldn't find anywhere where they elaborated upon that.
What?
Yeah, isn't that fat? Like, I want to know, like, what did it do? Like, what?
Like, maybe there were fish in the river that weren't there before, or, you know, the water tasted bad and now it tastes real good.
Man, this water tastes just like a man.
It tastes so good.
Raccoons love it.
The first probiotics.
Yes, yes. So some more cases. Vlad the Impaler, famous ruler of 15th century Romania and infamous inspiration for that everyone's favorite bloodthirsty scandal. Bloodthirsty, what's the word I'm thinking of? Scamp? Scandal?
Scamp?
Scandal? Scoundrel.
Scoundrel.
I find the words eventually. Everyone's favorite bloodthirsty scoundrel, Count Dracula. He was inspired by Vlad the Impaler because he was said to drink blood of his slain enemies. We are pretty sure that's not true at all. Anyways, Vlad the Impaler was posthumously beheaded following his assassination in 1476. So they finally got him and they cut his head off, probably as proof. Like, hey, he's dead. Let's put it on a stick.
All right, pay me.
Yep.
Give me money.
Edward Teach, a man better known as the infamous pirate Blackbeard, received a kind of posthumous execution following he and his crew's defeat and death at the hands of the Royal Navy. So after the sailors of the 42-gun Royal Navy warship HMS Pearl outmatched the legendary pirate crew, British First Lieutenant Robert Maynard captured Blackbeard's corpse, decapitated his head, then unceremoniously mounted that head onto the ship's bowsprit. And that's that long mast thing that juts out of the front of the boat.
Usually where they have like naked mermaids and stuff.
Yeah, but he put it on the very tip of that. So like a little, like, it's like a hood ornament almost. You know what I mean? Like a decal on a car.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck, this is going to look so fucking cool. Like just right there.
This is Edward Teach right here.
So the HMS Pearl sailed all the way back to the colony of Virginia with Blackbeard's head rotting atop that bowsprit. Yeah, just like a gruesome 18th century hood ornament.
Wow.
And upon arriving in the port of Hampton, Robert Maynard handed over Blackbeard's head as proof that Maynard could collect the bounty that was on Blackbeard's head. And authorities then placed Blackbeard's head on a pole that loomed over the entrance of Chesapeake Bay, a warning to any would-be pirates that, fuck around and find out, basically. And his head remained mounted there for several years.
Pearl will get you.
Pearl get you. This one is gross. Lesser-known American founding father Joseph Warren was subjected to a horrible posthumous execution by British soldiers during the Revolutionary War. Warren, a noted physician and second president of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress, aligned himself with famous revolutionaries such as John Hancock, Sam Adams, and Paul Revere, just to name a few. He was beloved.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
So Warren became a major general in the Massachusetts colony militia shortly before fighting the famous Battle of Bunker Hill in the Revolutionary War. Though his rank would have saved him from physical combat, Warren volunteered to participate in the battle as a common soldier. Upon reporting for duty, Warren asked General Israel Putnam where he determined the heaviest fighting would occur. The general pointed to a place called Breed's Hill. Soon after, Warren joined troops at Breed's Hill. So he didn't have to fight, but he goes like, hey, what's the scariest place here? Where is hell, sir? And he points that way and goes, okay, I'm going to go there.
He's like, in all the stories, the hero never dies.
Yeah, I have plot armor. I'm a founding father. Everyone will remember my name. So Warren was killed in action, last seen continuously firing his gun until he ran out of ammunition.
Damn.
Yeah, following the battle, Warren's body was identified by redcoats, stripped of his uniform, bayoneted, quote, this is a quote, bayoneted until unrecognizable.
Wow.
Then tossed into a shallow grave with another dead patriot and buried. In a letter to John Adams, one American soldier claimed that days later, Lieutenant James Drew of the British Royal Navy came to Breed's Hill in search of Warren. He sought out Warren's grave, exhumed his body, and, quote, spit in his face, jumped on his stomach, and at last cut off his head and committed every act of violence upon his body.
Whoa.
American soldier Benjamin Hitchborn reported in his letter, adding, quote, In justice to the officers in general, I must add that they despise Lieutenant James Drew for his conduct. So he's saying, like, this was so bad, the other redcoats were, like, disgusted.
Yeah.
So 10 months later, after the Battle of Bunker Hill, Joseph Warren's brothers, along with Paul Revere, retrieved his remains and gave him a proper burial.
I wish I could know, like, why this guy hated him so much. Like, so I could have the gossip.
Yeah, right?
Like the tea, you know?
I think he was just a notable name of
the other side, the enemy.
Yeah, these were the guys that were like, you know, fuck the king and fuck all that shit, whatever. And they're just like, you don't talk about my fucking husband that way.
I know he's fucking nuts. I know he's crazy.
But he's mine.
But he's my king.
That's mine. Last but not least, this is a wild story.
Okay.
Oliver Cromwell was a 17th century English military and political leader remembered for his impact on the British Civil War. If you're English, you definitely know him already. But as Americans, we might not. So anyways, he was known for his impact on the British Civil Wars, a series of 3 major wars fought between King Charles I and the British Parliament. Following the parliamentary victory, Cromwell served a major role in the trial and execution of King Charles. This all spanned from 1642 to 1651, with Charles' execution occurring in 1649. So it's like a year shy of a decade that the king was gone and Parliament ruled England.
He was like the head, right? The head of Parliament for the time?
Yeah, he was the figurehead of this, or one of the figureheads.
Why was Charles found guilty of treason?
So I'm assuming that means because of the Civil War, he was technically, I would assume, ordering the death of British civilians and British soldiers.
Yes.
Because it was Brits fighting against Brits. So whoever wins would say you committed treason because you lost and you were killing your own people. So following these wars, Cromwell became Lord Protector of the Commonwealth of England, Scotland, and Ireland from 1653 up until his death in 1658. Political instability following Cromwell's death led to the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, and Charles II, heir to the throne, was invited back to Britain and he assumed the role of king. So he had fled.
Right.
With Charles II in power, he sought revenge on Cromwell and other key, what he called regicides, which were the leaders who joined Cromwell in signing Charles I's death warrant before his execution. That all happened over a decade before he had come back and restored himself as king. And so at that point, these guys were dead. So Parliament ordered that the 4 of the most high-profile deceased regicides be posthumously declared guilty of high treason, kind of like a reverse Uno. And on January 30th, 1661, the 12th anniversary of Charles I's execution, the bodies of Oliver Cromwell, John Bradshaw, Henry Ireton, and Thomas Pride were exhumed and hanged in chains for a full day on the gallows at the Manor of Tyburn. And Tyburn was like a manor in Middlesex, England, where a majority of high-profile public executions were held for convicted murderers and traitors in the London area. So after hanging in chains, the bodies were cut down and beheaded. Each head was placed on a 20-foot pole, all of which were displayed side by side atop the roof of Westminster Hall, where Charles I's trial had taken place years earlier. So symbolic.
Damn. Yeah. This man was keeping notes.
Exactly, yeah. So the headless bodies had been dumped in a ditch near the gallows, and Cromwell's head remained atop Westminster Hall until 1684, over 20 years.
Damn.
When, as the story goes, on a particularly stormy night, harsh winds blew the gnarled skull off its pike, and it sent it tumbling down onto the streets below, where I guess a guard is said to have collected it and carried it home. According to legend, the guard kept it hidden in his chimney for years because he was like, I might be imprisoned or something for harboring this public traitor's
his skull. He like peeks up in his chimney now and again and like, my treasure.
Definitely takes it out when company's over. So he kept it in his chimney for years, and it would reportedly change hands between collectors indiscriminately for decades. But at the time of the head's disappearance, the authorities and locals immediately took notice, and a reward was posted for its safe return to Westminster. And this spawned a macabre Easter egg hunt, where people were all around London were just like looking for Cromwell's
a skull with their little sticks.
Yeah, Cromwell's head. So folks were just scouring everywhere for this rotten head. Meanwhile, it was hidden in a chimney. The head finally resurfaced in 1710, having been made into a tourist attraction in the private museum of Swiss-French collector Claudius Dupuy. The museum featured an array of curiosities and oddities. Dupuy had the head displayed in a cabinet alongside of sets of rare coins and exotic herbs. weird things from across the globe, real or forgeries, whatever. An actor named Samuel Russell, who claimed to be a descendant of Cromwell, later purchased the head from him and then sold it to a museum owner named James Cox. Cox did not display the skull publicly, instead showing it privately to close friends. James Cox would eventually sell the head to another museum. This one was a museum devoted entirely to Oliver Cromwell memorabilia. Mm-hmm. And then in 1814, the Hughes family, they were the owners of the museum, they sold the head to Surgeon Josiah Wilkinson. I guess it was the daughter of the Hughes brothers who sold it. Wilkinson cherished the head, carrying it around in a custom oak box and showing it off to strangers at local pubs. This head went with him everywhere he went. Going to the pubs, drinking, he would show it to people, pass it around. A woman who claimed to witness the head in Wilkinson's possessions around 1822 wrote in a letter, quote, "A frightful skull it is, covered with its parched yellow skin like any other mummy, and with its chestnut hair, eyebrows, and beard in glorious preservation. The head is still fastened to the inestimable broken bit of the original pole.
Wow.
All black and happily worm-eaten."
Yeah.
Josiah Wilkinson is quoted as saying, "The nose is flattened as it should be when the body was laid on its face to have the head chopped off. There is the mark of a famous wart of Oliver's just above the left eyebrow on the skull." For generations, the head remained with the Wilkinson family, and the journey of Oliver Cromwell's head gets cloudy by 1875, as other preserved skulls purported to be that of Cromwell's appeared in England.
I heard we had a Cromwell head club.
One such challenger appeared at Oxford's Ashmolean Museum. However, Josiah's descendants had their head carefully examined by Oxford professor of anatomy and physiology, George Rolleston, who supported the claim that the Wilkinson head was authentic. To further validate the family's claim, Canon Horace Wilkinson agreed to have the head studied by two scientists who would later publish their findings in a 1934 issue. So we're into the 20th century now. The head's still here. A 1934 issue of the scientific journal Biometrica. The scientists closely compared the head with life and death masks taken of Cromwell, finding that the head to be an uncanny match.
Oh.
After Canon Horace Wilkinson's death, his son, Dr. Norman Horace Stanley Wilkinson, inherited the head, and he decided to donate it to Sidney Sussex College, which was Cromwell's alma mater, in 1960. A small ceremony was held on March 25th, 1960, wherein the head of Oliver Cromwell was finally laid to rest in a grave near the college chapel. All in all, Cromwell's head had gone on a nearly 300-year journey from his posthumous beheading in 1661 to his head's final resting place in 1960.
Wow.
That's quite a legacy.
All because he didn't like some guy starting a civil war.
Yeah. And I guess Cromwell, he was like a Puritan, like a proponent of Puritan values or whatever. Mm-hmm. So he was also probably a bit of a wet blanket.
What is a wet blanket? I've heard that saying before, but I don't really know what it means.
Like a party pooper, like a stick in the mud, like a wimp.
Okay.
So I like the idea that his head was unceremoniously just kind of kicked around like a soccer ball, like for centuries.
Yeah, I could see that. He's like, "You're not following the rules."
Yeah. I don't care for you.
I don't care for you.
Yeah.
Don't follow the rules, do you?
You're gross. I don't like you. Fuck you. Kill him.
You're fucking dead.
You're fucking gross. You fucking you cusses.
Yeah.
Don't cuss in front of me.
I'll fucking do it myself, won't I?
Well, I'm Oliver Cromwell. My head will never leave my body.
If it ever did leave my body, I bet it'd go right back within a year.
I bet it would be collected immediately and put in a grave.
People love me.
A grave facing east.
They respect me.
I certainly wouldn't be passed around at a pub. No, alcohol's gross.
I hate it.
Gross.
I hate sex too.
I don't like when my willy gets wet. It makes me feel like I'm peeing. Gross. I had a son because I had to.
Oh, I hated it.
I saw my wife's boobs and they were there and I didn't like it.
I told her to hide them. Put your shirt back on.
I sheathed myself inside her like I was supposed to. I'm turning Australian right now.
I know, I'm like switching between like Scottish and like a weird British accent.
Yeah. Oliver Cromwell, God bless you. And that was the Lord Protector of the Commonwealth.
Yes.
Of England.
That was a whirlwind that I was not expecting.
The wild, wacky world of posthumous executions.
Wow. Thank you, Jeremy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, listeners, for listening.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh my God.
Let me actually really quick shout out to our patrons.
Yes.
So I'm going to give a shout out to our $5 and $10 tiers. I want to thank everybody, first of all, if you're a patron. Thank you so much. We love you. A shout out to Space Brother Robbie.
Woo!
Tia M.
Thank you, Tia.
Mary Bates.
Thank you, Mary.
Mary, we love you. Mary Bates. Mitch Haba.
Mitch Haba, thank you.
Love you, Mitch. And then down to our $5 daddies, we've got Paige O.
Thanks, Paige.
Jen Fontes.
Oh, I love Jen.
Fontes. North.
Thanks, North.
Paul Feudo.
Thanks, Paul.
Reese Cup. You've been here for a while, Reese. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Reese.
And Ray.
Ray, thank you.
Yes, and also Natalia. All of those people, thank you so much. As well as there's others too, and I feel bad for leaving you out, but I love you too. But I have to give something special to our
top 2 tiers. As always, thank you so much for listening. I mean, if you can't contribute to the Patreon, that's
no problem at all.
Completely understandable and fine.
Yeah.
We did start a free tier. So if you're just curious and you want to take a little peek, feel free to check it out by signing up for the free tier. There will be no cost to it, just maybe some time, to look at some stuff.
I'll make some old exclusive stuff free tier, so you have a taste of it.
Okay.
Also, if you want a preview of, for example, of our creepypastas, we do have, one is on the public feed, and we do have one video, so you can see our faces, on our YouTube channel, which is just According to an Idiot on YouTube. You can get a free episode to wet your whistle, and just remember that there's a lot more of that series on here. We're going to start doing some more stuff in the near future, some more content for you. Right now, I believe by the time this is out, you'll have a new creepypasta that I'm very proud of. That'll be up there for selected tiers. And I'm very proud of what we do on Patreon because we do it for people who really just want to be there. You know what I mean? Who
are just really craving more content.
Our guards are down. We're as disturbing and weird as we possibly can be.
It has become, I think, my favorite series.
Yes, I love doing the creepypastas.
And the videos are very fun, too.
Yeah, I think you guys will like that. So check that out. Check out the free tier. Just hang around. You can message us. You can
do whatever. Also, please recommend us to your friends.
Yeah.
We are largely word of mouth. So just telling a couple people about it, that can really help us out. They might tell a friend, and then they might tell a friend, and then they might tell their mom, and she'll hate us and leave a 1-star review.
And it'll stop there. The buck stops there with the mom and a 1-star review.
All because you.
Yeah.
All because you said something. Thanks.
And to British listeners, I'm sorry about the diatribe about Oliver Cromwell being afraid of having sex. I'm not sure if that's offensive. I'm not sure how beloved he is. If maybe he's not beloved. But I'm sorry for doing that.
I'm not.
I'm not either. I'll be real.
If you're not already following us on socials, make sure to do that so you can stay up to date on all of our episode releases, new content that goes out, new ideas, new things we're throwing out there just to keep y'all on your toes. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at According to an Idiot, and our Twitter, because I refuse to use the other name,
X,
at Idiots Accord. You can email us at accordingtoanidiot@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube and find our pretty little faces on there now. And of course, our Patreon, where you can get not free, but there is free now. You can get exclusive access to our creepypasta series. You get early access to episodes, ad-free listening, all the good normal stuff that you get from giving us money.
Yes. Did you mention polls too?
Oh yeah, polls. You can tell us what you want to hear about.
Whatever you recommend, we put it into a thingamajig and we make polls out of what you want to hear next. Whatever gets the most votes is the next thing we cover. So you can have a say in what you hear.
I put the fae on there because I've been reading so much about horny fairies.
Ah, yes.
But anyways, thank y'all for listening. Oh, good vibes.
Good vibes. My good vibe is kicking Oliver Cromwell's head around like a soccer ball.
Hell yeah.
And also that there's no more posthumous executions, at least in the free world.
That we know of.
It's very true. Let's say the government isn't sanctioning any posthumous executions in America.
Yeah, for now.
For now. That could change very soon.
You never know.
Yeah.
My good vibe is that I'm going to meet up with some other writers tomorrow.
Yes.
And I'm going to write a sketch on a boomer vampire. And I'm excited about it. I'm going to let you simmer with that. Thank y'all for listening. I'm not going to say that part. That's your part.
I will see you. We will see you.
We.
In time.
I love you. We love you.